Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Comics and Coffee. Starting your day out the nerdy way, I am Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nikki Alfaro.
I did not just wake up, so excuse my voice.
uh, so so we're back. Some more Comics and Coffee. This is definitely our most planned out show that we've had. We have very specific segments for you guys, and we're really going to be hitting all the big stories that happened from the past week. That's a big time lie. Not a lot has happened, and not a lot happened that is interesting to talk about in any sort of in-depth way. There's a couple things. I mean, one of the biggest stories, I guess, it kind of going around is that Tilda Swinton is going to possibly be playing the Ancient One in Marvel's Doctor Strange. Um,
Interesting.
Now, as we know, the Ancient One in the comics is an old Asian man, and Tilda Swinton is a not old white woman. Um, so there's two interesting things going on here, right? I mean, in one case, um, they're they're gender swapping, so they're adding a little bit of diversity while also taking diversity away at the same time. Um, it's a weird thing, right? How do you feel about this, Nikki?
I don't really know a lot about the character.
Mhm.
Um, I I don't know. Intersectionality is a weird thing. It's like I can support it, but it's like still be like Marvel, you could do better.
Mhm.
But
What do you identify more as, Nikki? A woman or someone who's Asian?
oh god, oh god, I have to choose.
Marvel's forcing you to choose. This is Marvel forcing you to choose. Um, I certainly think she's a fantastic actress, obviously, and could bring something really cool to the role. But I think in a especially in a world where um, diversity is kind of at a minimum, um, it seems needless to change the role in the way that they're changing it. Because even if they had kept it the way it was, they still would have been bringing a kind of a different layer to the universe that wasn't there before. And by doing this, they sort of are, but they're still sort of not. And there are other um, kind of uh, awesome female characters that Tilda Swinton could play in a Marvel film. So I don't know. I think it'll be amazing to see if it's true because it's not necessarily confirmed. It'd be amazing to see Benedict Cumberbatch and Tilda Swinton acting together and working off each other. But it just feels a little bit like, why would you need to do something like that in, in your movie? So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. It's still a rumor, so you can't get too much into it at this point. Um, we're gonna blow through whatever news we have to talk about really quick, so that Nikki has a story about it being dangerous to work at a comic book shop. So we're gonna get to that. Um,
It's more or less that I blow my budget back
okay.
into the
Oh, that kind of danger.
Yeah, but there
Okay.
is some weird stuff too.
Okay, so we'll get into that in a second. Um, uh, so this was rumored a few months ago, um, but now it seemed to come to fruition as Chris Burnham has gotten kind of DC comp copies coming in, and there's a picture that has been taken and tweeted and released that DC is going to start running half-page ads on the same pages where there's comic book material. So, imagine like two panels at top, then at bottom an ad. In this case, the pictures we see are Nick Lachey promoting Twix, but um, so I don't know what they're all gonna be like, but that's kind of what it's gonna look like. There's gonna be half-page ads in all of these books. Um, what do you? How do you feel about that, Nikki?
I'm kind of worried about the flow of the stories now. Um, especially like how is it going to be collected? What's that going to look like? Those are my concerns.
Apparently, they've told creators to like they have to plan when they're doing their layouts to have these half-page breaks in the single issue, but to also be prepared to have it make sense flowing together as a panel structure because when it's recollected, it's going to be obviously put back together on the same page.
Oh, those poor creators.
So, I mean, look, the company needs to make money, and I don't know what the realities are of publishing a comic book in actuality and how much money it costs.
Like,
Um,
is it going to let them have more pages though, or is it like
I
are
would,
they taking away like the full page ads or?
I don't know. We don't know those details, and I think we won't really know until we see the book.
Mhm.
Um, I would imagine. I would imagine that they are taking away at least some of the full page stuff and substituting it with this. The idea that if you're, I guess the idea that if you're forced to look at, you'll be more forced to look at an ad that's on a page in which you're actually reading than if I usually just skip over ads as you go through a book. But I mean that kind of advertising, I don't feel is ever successful because it creates a hostile relationship with I think the advertiser in the book.
Mhm.
You're not thinking, oh my goodness, I really want a Twix now because it's on the same page as Batman punching somebody in the face. You're thinking, oh god, this is right in the middle of my story. I don't even care about this. You have your eyes end up on it. I mean, look, they might have other market research that tells them differently. That if more eyes get on it, regardless of how they feel about the ad, people are more likely to buy the product. But I just feel when you're forced, or you feel like you're being forced to watch something, you often have a negative reaction to it.
Nobody likes commercial breaks unless you have to
No,
go to the washroom while you're watching.
I get I when I have Hulu Plus, right, and you have to the commercials happen and you can't like fast forward the commercials and stuff in Hulu, and literally I can watch TV shows on any device anywhere at any time, and I'm still cranky that I'm forced to watch ads where the commercials are supposed to be. So this is not going to be any better than that as far as how I'm going to feel about it. But I would still assume that if you're reading it obviously collected or you're reading it digitally, it won't really matter because they don't do the ads in those situations. That's actually what I'm most curious about is digital books don't have the ads in them. So, and in the past, that's as easy as just removing those pages. But for the digital version, are they going to have the version where the two separated, the page cut in half is going to be reconnected? And like, what if creators start? I guess maybe they won't do this because of the whole dictum from DC to make it so that it works for a trade. But what if a creator wanted to take advantage of like, okay, you're going to put this at the bottom. I'm going to do kind of like a half page, 2-page spread, where it's like one continuous long panel. How would that work when it was collected differently? I don't know how that's going to work out, but maybe those are things that aren't going to really matter as we go along. Um, but yeah, it's interesting, and I won't really know how I feel about it till I pick up the book and be reading it, and then you don't even really think about it as you're going through it. But it's something that I think is going to bring them a little bit of bad PR for at least a little bit of time, which is something that I think that have done a good job of turning around in the last couple of months with the initiative they have going on, and so I wonder how they're going to react to this stuff.
I
But
think it'd be okay with like the more traditional like layouts, like
mm,
the boxes, but like with something like Batgirl or Gotham Academy and
mm,
like a little bit. I'm just a little worried that it might mess with their spectacular layouts.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't know if you guys can hear this or not, but my landlord is like sawing something below me, and I live in the garage. So if you hear a buzzing, that's what it is. I apologize for it. Yeah, I mean they have this whole DCU campaign that they're running right now, which is promoting the new books that are coming and the new storylines that are coming, and really doubling down on their whole this new continuity or this new universe is not about continuity. It's about stories, and it's about what you as fans want to read, and being more inclusive and being more diverse, and which I think has been great. It's a great message to put out there. Like again, we said when they announced all of this stuff, it's nice to say the things, but it's about how you deliver on them. And we'll see how they deliver. But I found it quite interesting that people find a reason to get snarky about anything, but I don't know. I think that people have gotten a little overly snarky about the kind of DC messaging with the DCU messaging. I don't know. Have you noticed anything online, Nikki?
Not really. I mean, I've heard around the store they're just like, "Yay, you're pointing out stuff that we already know," but like
Yeah.
this is in the store. Of course, we all know that. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's just I don't know. It's like, well, I think the general consensus I've seen with people being upset about it are like, "Oh, you say it's DCU, but this exact book I want isn't here." I'm like, well, that's not really what it doesn't mean like everybody gets whatever book they want. They can only publish a certain amount of books, you know? So I don't know. But I think the messaging has been good. It's been strong, and I hope that it continues the way that it's going this way. So, Nikki, tell me about working at a comic book shop and how it's destroyed your wallet.
um, well, staff discount is makes things like really difficult, and we can special order stuff for ourselves. So I have to control myself so much. It's so hard. Um, but it's a good chance for me to catch up on stuff. I just bought Daredevil Born Again and Devil at Bay, which is the more recent run.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have all of the hardcovers for the first Mark Wade run. So I'm just gonna like sit down and have a Daredevil marathon, which I'm really excited for. Um, but yeah, it's kind of weird. The Our location is pretty central, um, so um, like we get a lot of like tourists and a lot of like it's just a lot of a great mix of people. So it's not just like guys that go there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I haven't really faced any like tests of my knowledge, which is I'm hoping continues. But I have had weird phone calls. There was one time I answered the phone and this guy goes, I have a weird question for you. And of course, that's, I don't know what to expect at that point. And he goes, do you have any books with the theme of Jesus Christ and his followers fighting off an alien invasion?
Wow, that's very specific.
and I'm thinking like we don't, but that actually sounds really fun. So that's the weirdest question I've gotten. A lot of people who call in, or there's one person who was just like, I think like looking for geek events. But every answer that we give him was like, met with a really hostile tone, and like I guess like people were trying to find a place to hang out, but don't really know the social situation or how to talk to people. So those weren't very nice phone calls.
What is it? I mean, Silver Snail is a very, like you said, very central, very popular comic book shop, and you haven't had like um, sounds like any really stressful experiences. But I mean, do you feel like a pressure on New Comic Book Day and stuff, or
um,
when those days come?
it's it depends on who's working cash. I actually have to work on like my bag and boarding. um, but I'm usually not on cash. And as far as I know, my schedule now, I won't be working Wednesdays, so pressure's off.
That's good. That's good. And is it like the experience? Like, have you had any good experiences with, you know, turning people on to a book that I know you did this before anyway, because we always got like tweets from listeners and stuff who said you were a pusher when they saw you there. But have you had like any good experiences turning somebody onto a series they might not have read before?
Yeah, like my first week, somebody came in, and she used to read DC Comics. I think that was the week Convergence Batgirl came out. And she used to read DC Comics. She went off for a while. She wants to get back in. So the first thing I recommended was the new Batgirl, and we still had like 35 and 36. And I think she just bought 35, and then she bought the second issue of Silk. And the next day she came in, um, looking to start a pull bin, and she looked for the other issues of Batgirl, and she's like, I loved everything, and like my heart warmed a little bit.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
really great. Uh, hmm, that's super cool. I mean, it's I think that comic book shops have a great power in that way to because we can all go in. It's sort of like school, right? It's like the reason you go to school other than to just learn is that they make you read things and do things that you wouldn't normally do of your own volition, right? You
Hmm.
you, you could decide I'm going to make my own curriculum, and you could pick what books to read and probably get a pretty good education on your own. But the point of it is that they kind of open you up to things that you wouldn't normally read, and
Hmm.
in a lot of way, comic shops have that power because I know if it hadn't been for Rob who runs Tor Comics around here, there's a lot of books I never would have checked out or given a chance to. You know, he kind of it was a slow week, right, kind of near the beginnings of when I was really going to the shop regularly, and it was a decently slow week. And he was like, "Oh, here's this book, The Cape. Like it just came out in hardcover, and it's a Joe Hill book." And he's like, "Read it." He's like, "It's one of the craziest things you'll ever read." And indeed it was. And I never would have picked it up if it hadn't been for that. And if it hadn't been for that, I would have been like, oh, I really like this Joe Hill guy. And then I never would have really picked up Lock and Key. And that was like one of my favorite series, and then it would open me up to other stuff from other publishers. So you need somebody, I think, to kind of bust you out of your idea of what you think is going to be great and what you think is going to be good.
Yeah, yes, just yesterday, there was like this little kid, and I guess his grandparents, and they were visiting from another province, and I think it was really important that like each of my coworkers, like I could see them around, and like even the owner of the store, like he was showing like different like storylines, because this kid was really interested in whatever comics. Like he was looking for Iron Man, he was looking for Superman, and he asked like everybody like what storylines to read, and they were all helping him out. And like I had to I was the one cashing them out, and like the grandfather is just like, it's really nice that you guys are all so friendly, and um it's a really nice experience. And yeah, it was just it's something that I think I myself pride myself in, or like I'm really proud of the store for being so welcoming. Um, and I had to tell him that I myself went to the Silver Snail when I was about that kid's age, like for the first time, and now I work there.
Yeah, that it's nice to hear those stories, because I feel like generally when I think of most comic book shops, I don't think of a friendly place where people kind of learn and get introduced to comics in ways. I think of the bad stories mostly because when I first started getting back into this as an adult, I had really bad experiences with a few shops where they were very dismissive, very, mean sometimes, and generally seem to want to ignore, a new customer walking in for the customers who are in there every day digging through the 25-cent bins, or the guy having the conversation with them at the counter about, the latest, Terminator trailer or whatever. And I'm waiting with, books that I want to buy or questions I want to buy about possibly becoming a regular customer for you, and they seem uninterested in that stuff because they have their little world carved out and they want to stay into it. And I think that gave me kind of maybe not unfair, but a rather negative opinion on most shops. And I've found very good shops since then, and I know there are very good ones out there. But there seems to be an odd thing with a lot of comic book retailers where that I've met anyway, that don't really have an interest in being good retailers. They just want to be people who like comic books, who sit in a room and sell and happen to sell books. And I think that from what I've heard from you and from Stephanie, the Snail has a very big focus on being a good retailer as well as being a great comic book place. So, yeah. All right. We had a question a couple weeks ago from Carolyn Coca, and she wanted to ask me, which did I like better, the Flash finale or the Doctor Who episode Father's Day? And I talked about the Flash finale a little bit on other shows, and I absolutely loved it. And for those who don't know what Father's Day is, it was in the first season of the Russell T Davies not rebooted, but modern Doctor Who with Chris Eccleston, where the companion character Rose, played by Billie Piper, they end up going back to a point in her timeline where the day that her father kind of passes away, and she has the chance to stop it from happening if she so chooses. And when she does, and I don't mean to spoil a 10-year-old storyline at this point, I think it is, but when she does, it's because like a time paradox, and the dad basically has to choose to die in order for everyone else to live. And it's a very emotional episode, a great episode, and probably the best of that initial first season of Doctor Who. And the Flash, the reason they compare, I think, is because the Flash deals a lot in fathers, right? It deals a lot in Barry's relationship to his biological father and Barry's relationship with his surrogate father, Joe. And he kind of is in this place where he has a chance to change something in the past, but by doing so, he will gain more time with one father, but lose another father kind of completely. And choosing between the two is what he has to do for kind of when it comes down to it at the end. And, for me, I think that I love the Flash finale, and I think it's one of the better finales of a TV show I've seen in a very, very long time. But that Doctor Who episode will always have a special place in my heart, because I feel like when Doctor Who wants to do kind of this emotional stuff, it does it better than just about anyone else, because it in the same way the Flash does it, but it plays in supernatural things, but brings it back down to a very emotional level. And that Doctor Who episode is so good and so heart-wrenching that it's one of those ones that I haven't seen it in probably 5 years or something like that. And just her asking me the question reminded me and brought up those feelings that the show brought up. Nikki, I don't even know, are you a Doctor Who fan?
That is unfortunately my nerd blind spot.
Okay.
I think I've tried, but I think I need to sit down and watch it with somebody. I can't watch it by myself. I don't know why.
A big tip I have for people looking to get into the show for the first time is that, don't get me wrong, the Eccleston stuff and the Tennant stuff are both fantastic. But the issue with watching it now is only that the effects aren't great. They're much better than they were, obviously, in the 60s, but the effects don't get really good until later on in the show. The show is in 4:3. It's got that very BBC like shot, a little bit shot on video look to it. And so sometimes I think it's a little bit tough for people to initially get into. I always tell people when I hosted and we did the Doctor Who cast, to watch the first Matt Smith season, which I think is technically season 5 of Doctor Who. I think it's 5 when it starts, and it's all on Netflix because it looks like a modern television show. It's got it, it looks awesome. It's a great season. And it's the start of a new Doctor, so it's meant to be sort of a jumping on point for new people. I mean, there are references to older stuff here and there, but nothing until you get till Matt Smith's, I think, second or third, the end of his third season, I think, is when they kind of layer back in some previous Doctor stuff because they're heading towards the 50th anniversary and stuff like that.
Okay.
But I say watch the first season of Matt Smith stuff, and if you like it, go back then. Then you can go back and watch the Eccleston and Tennant stuff. And once you get like a little bit into the Tennant stuff, it becomes HD and it looks better and the effects are good. But just that first like season, 2 seasons of the show are a little bit rough visually. Once you watch the Matt Smith stuff, you'll have an investment in Doctor Who. So you'll be able to go back and watch that stuff, and I don't think it will bother you anymore.
I think I feel like a sort of obligation now that I've met Karen Gillan to watch that season. So okay.
Yeah, it's really great too. I mean, it's so funny because I used to talk about Doctor Who every week ad nauseum, and I really don't talk about it anymore. But that first Matt Smith season is so good. It's such a good season of television, and it's one that I think everybody can enjoy, and Doctor Who fan or not, I think it can help to make you a Doctor Who fan if it's something that you're interested in watching. Did you watch the Flash finale though, Nikki?
Yes, I did. I loved it. I'm a sucker for like father-child moments because like I'm really close to my dad, so it's just like, oh no.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was just great. It had great emotional, I think, interconnected moments, and it's what the show did best. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do next week. Next year. I wish it was next week. Nikki, did you read any books yet this week?
Yes, I read through, I think, all of the Secret War tie-ins that I got, which are Secret Wars Journal, Inferno, and Inhumans. Don't remember if I picked up anything else. Nope, just those 3 plus Hawkeye.
That's okay.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the journal one, just because Kate is in it. But I managed to pick up the Annie Wu all new Hawkeye cover, which I'm so happy about. That was a good issue as well. I kind of like, I went through Sabrina, but like I want to sit down and like read it. But Deadly Class, I don't know if you're reading it on issue like monthly basis, but this issue is like, whew.
I'm not reading it on a monthly basis. So, I cannot comment on it. I read it in trade. I love it though. I mean, it's a great series.
It reads. I think like the first arc was a little bit not tougher to get through on a monthly basis, but I kind of forgot about it. So when I picked it up in trade, I was just it was a wild ride. And then from then on, I picked it up on a single issue basis, and it hasn't disappointed.
For me, and we talked about this on the show this week on Talking Comics, but for me, it's not even about the quality or thinking that it's not good month to month. It's that I'm not gonna buy most likely Marvel and DC stuff in trade form. I just don't do it. For me, most of that stuff is very month to month, and once I'm kind of done reading stories, no matter how good they are, I'm kind of done reading those stories because it's such a continuous grind, right? Where it's continuous, like Spider-Man, great story, but we got more Spider-Man coming. So I'm never feeling like, oh, I wish I had more Spider-Man to read. Like I never have that feeling. And with indie stuff, it's like either the idea of the story is very unique. So I'm like, oh, I haven't read like a time travel bad example because there's a million time travel stories. Horrible example. But I haven't read like a slice of life book in a while. I'm gonna go back and read blah 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 because I loved it so much. So I end up buying those books a lot more in trade, but I'm gonna read the Marvel and DC stuff month to month. So stuff like Deadly Class, stuff like Black Science, apparently all Rick Remender books. I would rather read at one time in trade only because I know it will allow me to give it the kind of attention it deserves rather than reading it month to month. The only series I don't do that with is Saga because I tried to do that for the first 2 volumes, or for the second and third volume, I guess it was. I tried to do that, and I just got spoiled on it. Constantly.
Same. I tried to trade weight because I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, and it read great in trade, and I loved reading. I loved that feeling, that special feeling of, oh, Saga came out, I can finally read it. But after the second, whatever the one where you think Lion Cat dies, I heard about that whole volume. Basically, it was all spoiled for me before I ever read it. So by the time I got to it, I was like, well, this is like ruined for me now. Like I'm still enjoying it, but not in the way that I would be enjoying it if I didn't know what was going on. So I was like, okay, I got to read it month to month. That's basically what happened with Saga. And I'm glad I do. I mean, it's a great book to read month to month. It definitely is. I think it reads great in trade, but I think it also just reads wonderfully issue to issue. And I think they do a great job of taking their breaks, but they never feel very long. It's like when the next I'm a bad comic book consumer because I don't look at previews. I don't fill out order sheets. Basically, like I walk into the shop and I basically pick out what I want to read that week, and I'm often surprised when like there are certain books. So whenever Saga finishes an arc and then goes on hiatus, and then I'm talking to Rob and he like puts the pile down for me to look through to look for my books, I'm like, oh my god, Saga's out this week, awesome! Like so that happens to me all the time, which is great. It's not so great because I know I should be like, but I'm coming so late to being a comic book purchaser, right? Like I never really did it until I was like 29 or whatever. That I don't. That's not how you buy anything else in your life. Nothing else in your life. Do it 3 months before it comes out. Do you have to decide you want to buy it? And I'm lucky enough to I have the shop I go to most of the time, Tor, but then we have a bigger shop, Fourth World, that's in the area as well. That if there's stuff that I don't order, stuff that doesn't come in that I want, that's sort of like, a little bit weird or whatever that that Rob doesn't get, I can always go to Fourth World, and they generally always have copies of everything there because they're a pretty big shop. So I have that benefit, and so I just don't do it, and I know I should, but I can't bring myself to decide what I want to do 3 months in advance.
Previews are hard at the store too because like I'd look at all the toys and statues and stuff, and I'd be like, ooh, shiny, I want it. And then you'd have to put your name down on it if you really want it. And it's such a commitment because, again, 3 months down the line, am I going to want it in August? Am I going to be able to afford it in August?
Exactly. Because previews are also dangerous because you're like, oh, I want this omnibus. Here, I'll commit to buying it and not have to give you any money. So that in 3 months, I'm like, oh my God, I owe you $300 today. Because I ordered all this stuff and didn't think about it, and that's scary to me. But we've had a lot of discussions on the show, I think, about the way the comic book industry retails, which is some of it's really insane to me. That like it's insane to me, right, that the customer isn't the customer. The store is the customer, right? Like they don't really care because DC. I mean, obviously, if you don't, if the store orders a bunch of books, people don't buy them, they're not going to reorder as many books, so the numbers are going to go way down. But I feel like the publishers are really focused on advertising or making things you know attractive to the retailer, and then like the consumer kind of comes second on that train, which is why you see all the things spoiled early because they're spoiling them, so the retailer knows you should probably order a lot of this book that Robin dies in, because that way, people want to come in and they'll buy it from you. But for the life of me, I could never understand, right? When I first started doing this, I would look at the numbers and I'd be like, why does a book sell 300,000 copies in its first month and then sells 100,000 copies in its second month? Like, is there really that many people who are like, F this book? Like, I don't want to read it anymore after the first month. But if I don't know, it's because you order a ton on the first issue because you expect it to sell a lot, and then you have to readjust for like realistic expectations after the second issue comes out. But it took me a really long time to figure that out. A really long time. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for the show, Nikki, unless you have anything else you wanted to chat about.
No, I'm good. And we were worried about, we were worried about filling time, but.
No. I know. I could talk about Snoop for an hour, so I'm not really worried about that stuff, but we went over. So there's that. If you guys want to get in touch with us, at Talking Comics on Twitter, use the hashtag TalkingJava so we can find your tweets over the other kind of Talking Comics tweets that come in. My personal Twitter is at Bobby Shortall. Nikki?
I am Asian Batgirl.
And subscribe to the show on iTunes on our special edition feed. You can find the show there. The show goes live every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. You can also find the archive on YouTube or on TalkingComicBooks.com. But thank you. That was weird. Thank you. It was one of those things where I started out wanting to say one thing and then changed to another thing while I was saying it. So my mouth couldn't catch up to my brain when I was talking. Thank you for starting your day out the nerdy way with us, and we will see you next week.